I wanted to say thank you all for the last workshop, and hopefully you were able to practice it at least one time, the flan and your Bible talks and things, because if you practice it just once, you're on your way to really trying to help develop Christ in you. In fact, that's what Paul says here. He says in Galatians 2:20, he says, I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And that's the whole idea of discipleship. It's not about forcing you to do things. It's about creating Christ within you so that you will do the things that he wants you to do out of your own heart. And so we're going to talk about some things. We talked about we've already talked about the check-in and flan. But I want us to start with a song which Rich is going to come up and lead. And the lyrics, and you're familiar with it, I'm sure, is on the next to the last page, I believe, in your handout. And I want us to, this is sort of our theme song for today. Our topic is joy, but it has to do with what this song says.
Okay, some of you may know this song, some of you may not, but we have all the words here, and it goes like this. Would you be poured out like wine upon the altar for me? Would you be broken like bread to feed the hungry? Would you be so one with me that I may do just as I will? Would you be light and life and love my word fulfill? Yes, I'll be poured out like wine upon the altar for you. Yes, I'll be broken like bread to feed the hungry. Yes, I'll be so one with you that you may do just as you will. Yes, I'll be light and life and love your word fulfill.
Thank you, Rich. If you look at that, this isn't just a song to sing. It's really an invitation by Jesus, the first two stanzas. Would you be poured out like wine to me, upon the altar for me? Would you be broken like bread to feed the hungry? He's asking, are you ready to be broken so that you can do my will? He said, would you be so one with me? That's important. So one with me that I may do just as I will. Well, that's that takes a lot of, what would you say, humility and surrender to do that. And would you be light and life and love, my word fulfilled? And then the response is for us, bless you, for us to find in our heart, yeah, I want to do that. It doesn't mean you're going to be perfect about it, but this is my pledge. Yes, I'll be poured out like wine upon the altar for you. I'll be broken like bread to feed the hungry. And when we sing that, we need to really recommit ourselves. Is this really, and find in our heart, is that where our heart really is? It's not just about gutting it out. It's about, where's my heart in this? Yes, I'll be broken like bread to feed the hungry. Yes, I'll be so one with you that you may do just as you will. And so that's the idea. We want to become one with Jesus. And part of the things that we were doing with our flan and our check-ins was to become one with each other and one with God, even more. And I'm hoping some of you experienced some of that. I don't know if there's anybody who wants to share any experience you've had that would be good on that, doing that. Is there anybody? You don't have to. We can always pass. So I know I felt a lot closer in our group when we've done that, just understanding where they're at, being able to just share in what's going on in their lives. So it's really important. Now, here's what's going on here. When you use the flan, which was feelings, listening, attuning, and needs, the feelings are helping you, when you share your feelings, helping you to get in tune with what you feel. Lots of times we do things and people in the world just go do things. They don't really know what they're feeling. They're just mad or something, you know, but they don't really try to figure out, okay, what's going on inside so they can govern what they do, their responses. And so feelings helps us to be able to not only check ourselves for where of it, but to be able to help others with theirs. Listening is one of the ways you help others with their feelings. But it also trains you and me to be like Jesus. He listened to people. I mean, he didn't just, the woman at the well, he didn't just come out and say, what are you doing? You know, you've been married how many times? What's going on? You know, he gradually talked to her and tried to help bring her out, help her to understand that he was there and he loved her in spite of what she had done. And the tuning is so important where and a tuning, Linda helped me to see this. I need to make sure it's not just asking gentle, curious questions. That's only part of it. But it's really emotionally connecting. It may be saying, wow, you know, that could be something. That would be a tuning. This is, you know, you're tuning with your being, where they're at, what they're doing. That's so important. It's connection. If you don't have tuning, you don't really have connection. You're just going on with your life. But you're tuning. You're getting involved in the other person's life. In a good way, hopefully. If you're not tuning right, then it's not a good thing. But and then needs helps people. You ask them what they need. You try to. It shows you care. There's really something about asking someone what they need that really helps them to figure out what they need, but also helps them to understand that you care. There's people out there. Someone can be of help, or someone can not just about help, but somebody can be there and enjoy with them the joys that they have, things like that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I hope you've been experiencing that. I hope you continue to do that. But we want to move away from the formal check-in. You remember, check-in was a vehicle to try to help us learn some of these skills. It's not well, this is the only way you can do it, a box to put you in. It was a vehicle to try to help you learn that. So if you've been working on that and you've learned some of that, I want you to try, and I think God wants you to try to do this with each other. Be this for each other. Not do this to each other. Be this with each other. Where you share your feelings, they share theirs, you attune with them, you ask gentle, curious questions, you emotionally attach to what they're doing, and then, you know, you try to help meet needs or ask about their needs. And you can, this will become a way of life where you're a loving vessel to connect with people. I think especially for young Christians, this is so important, but especially for old Christians too, because I don't think all of us, and myself included, have perfected this. But it's becoming more like what Christ would be like. And so it's developing Christ's heart and character in us. So we're not going to, I would encourage you to go ahead and do a formal check-in every once in a while just because it reiterates what we're learning. But do this as you go and you're with each other, whatever you're doing with each other. I try to do this. I don't know, some of the men's group, I don't know if you've seen that. That's what I try to do, just try to do that. So, but that's the last time. That's workshop 1. And that was the one where we learned about philon. And today we're going to learn about joy. Joy with Jesus, joy with others, and joy for yourself. Okay? So let's get started here on that. So if you have your handout, I'm on page 2 is about where I'm at. Number 3 there. I want to talk about Jesus' joy. It's incredible what kind of joy Jesus had. Let's go over to Hebrews 12:2. Can someone read that, please? Hebrews 12:2. You can do 1 and 2 if you want, but Hebrews 12:2, is there any? Okay, go ahead, Alyssa. Yeah, that's okay.
pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God.
So it talks about joy there. What's it say about joy? Anybody?
For the joy set before him.
This joy set before him. I think lots of times I just read over that and don't even look at it. It says joy. Now you think about that. How did Jesus have joy enduring the cross? I mean, what does that mean? What was the joy set before him?
Returning to the Father.
Okay, he's returning to the Father, definitely. But the Father was with him all the time, right? Okay, but I think that's valid. What other joy?
Restored relationship with us?
Ah, I think so. Yeah. You remember Jesus was totally selfless. So going to the Father was good. Not so much for him and the Father, but it was good. But I think remember his purpose, his goal was to come and seek and save the lost. And so and the relationship is so important. I think that's what his joy was, set before him. Wow, I get this opportunity to bring joy to people. And joy, obviously, to me, Jesus would, because he's part of the relationship. But the joy, if you just meditate on that sometime, the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Do we have that joy? That we'll endure anything to try to bring joy to other people, try to bring people to Jesus. But lots of times we just read over that verse and we don't really contemplate that part of it. So joy, in Philippians 4:4, it says, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say, rejoice. Well, the idea of rejoice in English as well as in Greek can have what's called transitive or intransitive form. Now, don't worry about that. It's just big words for grammar. But transitive is where you transfer something to someone else. So rejoicing isn't just you intransitively, you inside feeling joy, but it's you helping, I like to call it, joyify someone else. You're working to bring joy to someone else. Okay, so it's a two-way street. So when you say rejoice in the Lord always, it doesn't just say, oh, I got to get joyful. You can go and do things to help others feel joy. And so today we're going to learn about, and you already know a lot of these, I think, but we're going to talk about a few of these things, and I want us to really focus on that. How do I bring joy to my brother and sister, and even to the people outside? Next workshop, we'll be talking about that part of it. But my definition of joy, if you want to look under there, it's under the Philippians 4:4 reference. It says, what is joy? I'm defining joy in the sense of the Hebrew word of shalom, which means everything's in perfect order. And so I look at it relationally in the sense of relational peace. If you think about relational peace with God, with each other, with yourself, relational harmony, everything's as it should be. Relational wholeness. You're developing your relationships such that it's just getting better and better and better and more whole. It's not sick, if you will, in some ways. It's not hurtful in some ways. It's getting better and better. Relational completeness. Relational prosperity. Relational welfare. Relational tranquility. Everything's just as it should be. If you think about that, isn't that what people really would like to have? And it takes time. This summer we'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary. Lynn and I. We're still working on things. Okay? But as you work on them, you get closer and closer to that relational joy that God wants you to have. But it takes work sometimes. It takes time. It takes growth. And growth doesn't happen all the time. I was looking at my tomato plants. They're not growing a whole lot. So I'm just now thinking, well, maybe I can go stimulate their growth. Put something in the ground. You know, it's going to take time. it's gonna take time. I can't have the harvest before probably at least August because they're planted a little late. But so it takes time. But you have to be there, involved in it to really make it happen. Jesus' joy. Let's look at some things here. In John 3:16, can anyone quote that?
God so loved the world that he gave his
Only begotten Son.
whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life.
Do you see? Thanks, Steve. Do you see that as God bringing joy to us? He gave his only begotten Son, so whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. The idea of eternal life is not so much the length as the quality. The idea of eternal in Greek has it's a quality. Not that it doesn't have the timeline, but think about it. Heaven, you probably don't have time. You know, God is eternal. He's time and space. But it's the idea of quality, this relationship. And God, out of his joy, just like Jesus in his joy, said, I'm going to do something. I'm going to try to bring joy to people. And you look over, if you want to look at Luke 2:10, but I can just talk about it. But it's where Jesus was going to be born there. And it says, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be for all the people. That's God's message, Jesus, sending Jesus. I want them to have joy. And so this joy is really one of God's purposes. And joy, relational joy, is what he wants us to have happen. If you go, I want you to think about, we did some of this in our Bible study group because we were trying to find and look at some of the feelings Jesus has. Let's go over to John chapter 1. Because it's good to understand that Jesus was 100% man as well as 100% God. And so I assume that he would have felt things that we would feel. And so you go over to John chapter 1, and it says in verse 9, it says, the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and through the world, though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to those which were his own, but they did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believe in his name, he gave the right to become the children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision, or husband's will, but born of God. There's two things happening here, emotionally, with Jesus, I believe. First, when he came to his own, and what happened? They didn't recognize him. And they didn't receive him, right? So what's that mean? Rejection. So what do you feel when you feel rejected? Sad. Anything else? Lonely. Okay. Anything else?
Discouraged.
You can be angry, discouraged. Yeah, if you're ever rejected, that's not a good feeling, right? It's not something you cherish. Oh, I hope I get rejected today. You know, it's part of it's not part of joy. And that's why you don't want it. But the second half of this, it says, but to what? To those who received him, he did what? Gave him the right, and believed in his name, he gave him the right to become the children of God. So what's he saying here? Right to receive. How does it feel to be received? What's that mean? Belonging. Good. Yes. And you're going to be part of his people, his children. Yeah. You receive. Whenever somebody receives you into their house, they don't just spit on you or something. You know, you feel like, wow, they really care, right? They want my presence. They're glad to be with me. They're here for me. They want just good feeling usually. I mean, I don't think I've ever gone into a place or had anybody receive me that I hated, as long as it was genuine. So Jesus was feeling this too. He's got this opportunity to help so many people be part of his life, be part of his joy, be part of his family as children of God. And so Jesus has these type of feelings. So remember that. And so if you're going to tune in with God and you were reading this, the next thing I would ask is you tune with you. Wow, that must be difficult. I understand. I feel what you're feeling. I think I went over some of this in my little video, but you ask, what do you need, Jesus? What would you say? If you were to tell him in this passage. If you're going to bring joy to Jesus, what would it mean?
For us to receive him?
Yeah. But how? He says to believe in his name. Belief in Greek is the idea of trust. It brings joy to God when we trust him. It brings joy to God. That's part of receiving him. If you let somebody into your house, you probably are extending trust, right? If you got somebody that you don't trust, come on in. It's harder to do it, right? And so Jesus wants us to trust him. It brings joy to him. It's part of receiving him. And that's what we're all about. Okay, how can I become like Jesus? Because that's what he wants. But just to serve him and love him and be part of his life. And then over in Luke 15, 7, 10, and 32, there's some parables Jesus talks about there. And it talks about the angels. There's rejoicing in heaven over every sinner that repents, right? And this just isn't bad things that we do, I don't think. Because sin is just an affront towards someone. It isn't necessarily just all the things that are listed. The idea of sin is not just missing a mark, like lots of times we were told. That was back in 500 years before Christ did. It meant that. When you come up to Jesus' day, it's more of a religious term of hurting somebody. You were hurting them. And so this is kind of neat, because when we repent of whatever we do, which means we change our life for Jesus, brings joy to the angels in heaven. Have you ever thought about doing something to make the angels joy? Do we really think of it that way? You know, I just got to change my life. I did this bad thing. Spank yourself and hit you in the head. You know, some people bang their head against the wall. No, it's like, I have this opportunity to share and change my relationship with God to bring joy to him. I will get joy too, but that's not the primary thing. It's a selfless thing to bring joy to God. Does that make sense? Okay, so, yes?
How do we know that Jesus felt these things?
I just assume because he was fully man.
Okay.
And you see some of the things he felt, like in the garden. He talks about being overwhelmed. He talks about, just struggling. He talks about other times. Sometimes it says he's tired. Okay, and so I'm pretty confident that since he was fully man, and that's one of the reasons he could identify with us over in Hebrews, because he's been tempted in every way like we are. So there's a lot of things that show about how Jesus felt what we felt. It doesn't say it specifically here, but I'm taking it from the idea that he was man, and these other passages that show some things. But I think Jesus would. I don't know why he wouldn't. He isn't just a stoic God up there. He's a passionate, compassionate God. So, and I think that's how we can identify. If he didn't feel some of the things we feel, it'd be very hard for us to have that personal relationship with him. Think about it. He would just be God up there, and we'd be down here, and there wouldn't be any emotional connection with him if he didn't have some type of feelings there that we can connect. And one of the things I don't think I mentioned, maybe I did in my lecture, or my little, what do I call it, the video I did, was that I don't think there's anything we do, maybe I did mention this, that doesn't have some type of feeling to it. Is there? Unless you're a zombie? There's some type of feeling attached. And just like Cain didn't take care of the feelings he had way back in Genesis, and he killed Abel. If we can capture those, what's going on inside, and help others capture those, it's going to change the outcomes. So it's not just about the outcome, it's about changing the heart. So I don't, there could be some that I'm not aware of, but I think feelings are involved in everything you do. And sometimes we just react out of feelings, you know. So we've got to be able to get those feelings under God's control and make sure they're godly. Okay, so now that was Jesus' joy, bringing joy to him. And he brings joy to us. It's two-way street because he came. The second thing I want to look at is, how do we give joy to others? How do I bring joy to you? The first thing that we learn, a lot of this comes from Life Model Works. Some of this comes from Life Model Works and their study on how the brain works. And the first thing is having a glad presence. In other words, if someone comes or you go to someone and you communicate in some way that you're glad to be with them, it produces dopamine in their brain. Now, we've always heard of dopamine being kind of bad because drugs also produce it, and people get addicted. Well, it'd be good to be addicted to joy, but this is it's a good feeling, or I should say the pleasure drug, if you will. So when that's released, you know, it feels good. You may not be aware of it even, but you don't feel threatened or anything. So if someone comes and they're glad to be with you, and they say they're glad to be with you, and it gives you security. It gives you a feeling of trust. It gives you a feeling of care. It gives you a feeling of connection. It says, wow, these people care about me. On the other hand, if someone comes and says, get out of here. I don't want you in my face. How dare you even come into my house? I got this baseball bat. If you don't leave, you know, it's a little bit different feeling inside, right? It's not the same thing. So if we can condition ourselves to be able to communicate and sincerely with others, and I'm glad to be with you, no matter what the situation. Maybe a person's going through a divorce. Maybe they're going through a death, you know, in a family. Maybe they're upset because the policeman stopped them. You know, whatever. If you can be glad to be with them in that and not try to fix them at that point, but try to just be there with them gladly, it'll bring joy to their hearts. So, at least I have. That's my experience. If I have people that are glad to be with me, it's good. No, it's not bad. So I don't think there's any bad in it. Secondly, if you go over to Romans 16, let's go over to Romans 16. This is an incredible passage. We had one of our Bible talks on it. And it's just incredible because there's a word in here that happens over and over and over and over and over and over and over. What is that word? Can you just scan through it? What do you see? Greet. Does it just happen once? How many times does it happen? Paul says, greet Priscilla and Aquila. Verse 5, greet the church that meets in their house. Greet the dear friends of Epaenetus. Greet Mary, who worked very hard. Just wouldn't marry the mother of Jesus. It's just a different Mary. Greet Andronicus and Eunia. Eunia was probably a woman. Greet Amphiphilis. And we found 2-3 women in this. Greet, 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 greet. It goes on and greet, greet, greet. So what's the point in greeting? What does greeting do? What's greet mean? If you greet someone, yes, you say hello. Yeah. Hello, come in. Oh, how are you doing? you know, really sincerely. But if someone came in the door, and we were all not sitting here, but we were just doing things, and no one greeted them, what might that feel like?
Rejection.
Could be. Could. Suppose everyone greeted him. What might that feel like? Sad? If everyone greeted
Maybe a
him?
little overwhelming.
Yeah, it'd be overwhelming. Okay, what if 4 or 5 people greeted them? Okay, they're going to feel welcome, right? Yeah, you don't want a stranger, just everybody goes. So there's ways, there's what's called capacity. People have different capacities. Some people would love to have everybody come and greet them. Some people, it's hard to greet one person. That's a capacity. So you have to sense where people are and try to have tender mercy toward them. That doesn't mean they'll stay there, but that's where they're at right now. And so you have to have this capacity. You have to recognize capacity of people. But at the same time, don't just assume that you shouldn't greet somebody. Okay, because it will bring joy to them. At least I've never been greeted that I felt bad about. Do you? Have you? I don't think so. Okay, so
If I could make a comment.
Go right ahead.
I mean, I guess I think of, you know, like a greeting meaning not just maybe us today per se, because okay, I've seen some people in the last couple of days, but it's more almost that you haven't seen someone for 6 months or
Sure.
3 years, or, you know, and Paul hadn't seen some of these people for a while, and so it's that thing, you know, it's more of a reunion or a bigger event. It's like, wow, you know, I'm seeing, you know, my brother who I haven't seen for 5 years,
Sure.
or, you know, kind of a thing. And I guess I'll also throw in I've been listening to a podcast that was talking about dopamine.
Okay.
They kind of talk, ultimately, you know, it's like all kinds of events are either, you know, they're either kind of exciting, you know, they're a plus or a minus or just kind of and ultimately in kind of how our brain reacts. And so I think, like, yes, I think joy is important. I mean, obviously joy is important, but it's almost like we can't live always in some manic,
yes,
you know, whatever. It's like there's a whole lot of things that are, you know, we end up with this baseline dopamine level, but then, you know, when some event or thing or goal, and, you know, so not to get off on that, but
I think there's a
you know, a lot of life is
but you still have joy.
Absolutely, but you know, then when these things happen, you know, but we don't want to be just in this state. And I think a lot of people are just kind of and yet there's a lot of, you know, do we really, I'll say, recognize or really experience that real joy of different situations?
Right. And I think it's good for us to try to increase that joy all among us. I agree 100%. That's good. Joy, dopamine doesn't just happen when I get joy. It's there, but it can be increased. So I have an assignment for you. I'd like you to take a minute and go greet someone you have not greeted yet today. I think you guys are experiencing joy. Was there anyone who didn't experience joy in just getting to meet somebody that you hadn't met today? I mean, you knew them even if you knew them. I think it brought joy to people. And so it's important for us not to just have joy among our own group, but to reach out to people we haven't, even at church or outside, people we don't normally greet, okay? Because it's going to bring joy and it's bring connection. Okay, so that's one thing. Being glad to be with people, letting them know that, greeting one another. The third thing is eye-to-eye contact. If somebody comes in the room and they just do this, and you look at them, and they don't ever look up at you. What does that feel like?
They don't want to talk to me.
Yeah. They don't want to connect to me. They don't want to. I remember seeing a person that was coming in and they didn't look up, and this other person was looking for them to look up, and they just kept looking, kept looking. The person never did look up, and they just went by. I don't think the person knew that was going on, that it wasn't looking up. Now, it's important to understand that some people can look people in the eye. It doesn't mean stare. We just have eye contact, okay? You're not just going to go and say, it's not necessarily comfortable, right? But some people have capacity to do more than that than others. So we have to be aware of that. But everyone, I think, if they're not super depressed, will experience joy by just having some eye contact. And so it's good for us to try to facilitate our eye contact with people. Okay? Because that also brings joy. It also brings a dopamine type thing. So they taught us that your eye contact releases dopamine too. If it's good eye contact. No, it's not. There's different types of eye contact. So I got another thing for you to do. I want you to someone close to you. No, we may have to have some people close. I want you for about 30 seconds to look the other person in the eye. Don't say anything. Think good things about them. Okay. Or good things, just think. And you look at them in the eye, and for about a second or two, then you break eye contact. You don't want to just stare. Break eye contact and then come back. Break eye contact and come back. Break eye contact, come back. Does that make sense? But you're actually making eye contact. For practice. So I don't know if we all have a partner we can do that with. Okay. So I'm gonna, and so you just look at the other person. Look at the other person in the eye. Look at the other person in the eye. Don't stare at them and don't talk. Okay. Okay. This is silent. Okay. You're not talking. Okay. So I'm going to time you here. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. How did that feel? Was that was it kind of joyful?
Yeah. Started off as the...
It makes you feel vulnerable.
Yes, it does. You become vulnerable to each other. You connect a lot better. Yeah, it does several things. And Linda and I went to a Thrive workshop, and we had to do this every day for 5 days. For about, 5 minutes a day? It was hard for Linda because she doesn't have that type of capacity to make eye contact as much as I was fine with it. And so it brought me great joy. But, and I missed it after the 5 days were up. It was like, whoa. And so maybe you could practice this. Now, you don't want to do it with the opposite sex very much because there may be some connections you don't have, unless you're married. Okay. But you can do it with anybody, and you just govern that. Okay.
So, quick question. I felt very uncomfortable, and I don't want to do it again.
Okay. Well, but Wes, when I see you, you do make contact. I think it was probably the time, maybe.
Not talking. That was so much better.
Yeah, not talking. So, yeah, you're not going to just go to get there to somebody but I just wanted you to focus on that. So I think you'd feel comfortable when you're talking with them. Okay, well, this is new, so this is different. So it's like, okay, I just want you to be aware of that, to always try to make contact with people. So, anyway, imagine doing that for 5 days, which we did. That was something else. Okay, I've got to keep going here. I'm a little behind, but we will get going. Okay, so the last thing before we take a mini break is on number 4 on the next page. It's the idea of always trying to have your RCs, or relational circuits, on. Now, some of you have heard of this, but relational circuits are, if your relational circuits are off, you can't bring joy to someone else. You're probably not experiencing joy yourself. Okay, your ICs would be off if you have this. If you're relating to someone and something happens or a problem, I just want this problem or person or feeling to just go away. Have you ever felt that with somebody or something? I just want this to go away, you know, and you're locked onto that. I don't want to listen to what others feel or say. Leave me alone. Probably doesn't bring joy. Now, it doesn't mean it's sinful necessarily to be in this situation, but we need to recognize it so maybe we can correct it. My mind is locked onto something upsetting. It just gets so, you're just absorbed in it, just totally, and it's so hard to break away to enjoy other people or be with other people or even to enjoy what you're doing yourself. Or I just want to get away or fight or freeze or run away or hide. You know, your relational circuits are not on. Relational circuits are what help you connect. And if you're doing these things, it's really difficult to connect with people if these things are happening. There's ways to get the RCs back on. We'll talk about that after a break. RCs are on, however, when the person is more important than the problem. I used to say, hate the sin but love the sinner. Things like that. But this is, I don't know if that fits in exactly, but it's the idea of there is a problem. But my relationship with that person is more important than a problem. So I'm not going to give up on my relationship just because we got this severe problem. Okay, so that's a mindset that we can have. And if we have that, then our RCs are still on. If we don't, then they may be off. Another one is, I can be respectful, aware of, and interested in other person's point of view. Now, this may be difficult depending on what that point of view is. Sometimes in politics, that's really difficult. But can I be interested to connect in spite of the other person's point of view, but just to get to understand them and what's going on, trying to understand. Or LGBTQ. Or other things that people do out there. Are we such that we can talk with them, be aware of them, be respectful, even if you don't agree, and be able to dialogue with them? This is kind of difficult because we tend to want to, something that's not right, we tend to want to, get rid of it rather than trying to engage with it. Try to help it.
Is that like seeking to understand?
Yeah.
Their point of view?
Yeah. It's not condoning what they're doing,
right,
but it's seeking to try to understand where they're coming from. Because if you, in our check-ins when we did Flan, people had not necessarily different point of views, but they had issues that were there. And it seemed to me, at least it helped me a lot, was that if people understood, and I knew they understood me, it not only helped me to process, but also helped me to feel loved and connected, which is the first step toward helping them where they're at. That's what Jesus did. He came, what does it say? He, even while we're yet sinners, he died for us. He came to present himself to us to try to help us get close to him, bring that relationship. He didn't agree with what the woman at the well was doing. He didn't agree with the woman caught in adultery. He didn't agree with what the Pharisees were doing. And so for a while he put up with them. And then there was a place at the end, you know, where you have to draw the line. But initially, trying to connect is what he did. Or another thing is, I see this moment, new situation where I can learn something. That means your RCs are on. Okay, no matter how hard it is or what's going on, maybe I can learn something. Okay. I'm not struggling with feeling isolated or alone. If you don't feel that, you're probably you probably have your RCs on. I can join and give and take both verbally and non-verbally. So you're able to correspond with the other person. It doesn't mean that you do that all the time, but that's when your RCs are on with that person. I'm eager to talk with God about this situation. In other words, I know some people, they get mad at God. They can't talk to him. No, I'm mad at you, God. I'm going to talk to you. Well, your RCs aren't on it. Or I get mad at Steve, for instance. I don't want to talk to him anymore. You know, that would be my Caesar be off. I don't have that, by the way, but just an example. Okay, so those are some things to think about. I'm giving you a lot of things. So what I plan to do is over the next 10 weeks is to get some videos on each one of these and have you practice awareness, because these things will help us to be able to be aware of where we're at and to change, and to be what God wants. Okay, I want to take just a mini break, but I do need 2 volunteers for our demo. Do I have 2 volunteers? On the last page, and for some handouts it might be the page before last, but last page is what to watch out if you're overwhelming someone, or if you feel overwhelmed. Because I think lots of times if we're not aware of that, if somebody's overwhelming us, we just ignore them. We don't communicate to them that feel overwhelmed, they might not receive it. I think it's important to know some of the signs of overwhelm in another person. So one of the signs is staring or averting eyes, okay? I remember studying the discipleship with my grandpa. He just stared at me. He didn't see a thing. I didn't know what to do with that. I don't know, maybe I was overwhelming. But sometimes staring or averting eyes, you're not paying attention, you know. You're rolling eye, you know, whatever. It's indication. Yeah, or looking at the watch. Yeah, that's another thing. Or they withdraw. You sort of, yeah, they don't make eye contact. Forehead may be crunched or furrowed. You know, you're making some type of frowning or some type of thing there. Your eyes can get big. You know, if you're threatened by somebody, you're being overwhelmed that way, your eyebrows go up. They sometimes say there's rapid eye movement. You may even close eyes. People may close their eyes. Eyebrows, yeah, I already said eyebrows rising.
This is when somebody is overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed because of something intense that they're beginning to experience from another person. It could be they're angry at them. It could be anything that's not bringing joy, basically. Okay? And tensing jaw muscles and cheeks. Leaning back. You know, someone comes up there talking, then all of a sudden it changes. You're leaning back, okay? Looking blank. My grandpa was that way. I don't know. Anyway, or crying. If you overwhelm someone too much, they just start crying. What'd you say, Wes? A frozen gaze. Yeah. Or fear or distress. You can tell they're afraid. So those are some things that you can tell when there's, it's an unconscious thing, actually, is the beginning of it. Because when you have something that's being sent to you, you have some body responses, even sort of unconscious at times. Does that make sense? Okay, so the idea is for us to be able to decide, to be able to see that in ourselves so we can handle that in ourselves. Or if we see, and we can tell somebody, I'm feeling overwhelmed, then they can stop. But sometimes we have people that'll talk and 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 talk. Can't handle it. That's legitimate. We all have different capacities. And so we've got to respect each other where they're at. Doesn't mean it can't grow, and it doesn't mean it shouldn't grow, but that's where they're at right now. Yes.
I have a question. So say we're in like a D group type setting, and you see, like, you're watching a lot of times dynamics between different people, and you see a person, and you're picking up that they're getting overwhelmed by another individual in the group. And as the facilitator, do you have any advice on like how to help in that situation? Because maybe the two individuals, maybe the individual that's doing the overwhelming is not seeing it.
Yes.
But you're definitely feeling
right.
it. Do you have any recommendations?
My first thought, and I don't know this is the only way to do it, but first thought is to stop everything and just ask the person how they're feeling, the one who's being overwhelmed.
Like to say, hey, can we just
Yeah, let's just stop here a second. You're doing a check-in here again. Okay, you're doing a flan. Okay, and if everybody's trained a little bit in that, then they'll understand that, okay? What are you feeling? And just, if the person, they can pass if they want, but if they really want to share, I'm feeling this or that, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. And then have other people attune with that person. Hopefully the person that was doing the overwhelm will also attune, and that will be a sign that they will say, oh wow, I didn't know I was doing that. Sorry about that. That's my first impression.
So clarifying the question, do you actually stop the conversation?
Right, that's what I heard you say.
I think so.
Okay.
I'd say, hey,
You're
let's
like
just...
the D-group leader and you're watching two people.
Yeah,
Whoa.
you know, I think it's good to say, hey, and you can set it up before. You can say, I'm feeling like there might be something we need to work on here, or we need to talk about here. At least I'm feeling it. But I wanted to ask this person if they wish to share how they're feeling. And then if they don't, you can always talk to them afterwards, after the group meeting, and just say what you were trying to do. And if it's possible for them to share, you know, even get together with the other person and talk about it, maybe, I don't know. But does that make sense? That's what I'm thinking. Yes?
So I guess a thought or a question, like, often that person's feeling overwhelmed or guessing that they may be overwhelmed. Maybe is a bit hesitant to fully say what they're saying. So I also know for me, like at times, like I could be talking to Andrea and I could just start saying a bunch of things and overwhelm her.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm wondering is it also worth questioning the person that is doing the overwhelming? Because sometimes I might start saying a bunch of things, and it's like almost to dig into the why of, you know, why I'm saying all these things, that I think there's also opportunity there to figure out what that person, you know, is thinking, because they, you know, they were obviously clueless, but it's also, I think sometimes when we say a whole bunch of stuff, you know, it's like, what's under all that?
And I think that's where it'd be good to also ask them, what are you feeling? Get them in tune with what they're feeling. What's, you know, not necessarily what's causing all of this you're sharing, but what's underneath it all. And you could even have you could have a flan with them, if you will, and just trying to say, okay, it'd be good to share both of them, have them both probably share what, if they feel like it in that context. It's kind of, you have to be very sensitive there, but for sure. But I think once we get to where we can tell each other, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, can we take a break? Not only will that help with each of us, it'll help in our marriages, may even help with us on our kids. It depends on the situation. It doesn't mean you leave things there, but you take a break. I can't take it. I need a break right now. We're not going to be perfect at this, by the way. I'm not saying you need to be perfect. But I'm just saying, if we can become aware of that on ourselves, understand I'm becoming overwhelmed, just give me some time. Or we see it in someone else, oh, it's time to stop. That's loving them. Okay, Mandy?
I'm just going to say, I think it'd be helpful, I mean, when we're talking about like the D group situation, like even just before the D group starts, to say, if at any point you feel overwhelmed, I just want you to, it's free to say that. You know what I mean? So we don't just stop and go, are you overwhelmed? You know, because then it's like kind of like, oh, I'm on the spot now.
Yeah, no, that's
kind of just that expectation that it's okay
excellent.
if you get that way.
Excellent. That should be in all our relationships, basically. We should have that understanding in my mind. If you're feeling overwhelmed with anything I'm doing, please let me know. I'll stop. And we'll give some time here. I think it's going to go a long ways, because I think we overwhelm each other in our marriages. I think we overwhelm each other in, you know, it's our relationships at times. And so the more we can learn how to deal with that, the more we're going to be able to love the other person where their capacity is. Okay, what'd you think about that exercise? It's interesting, isn't it? Different people have different ways that they show overwhelmed. And it may not always be overwhelmed. Linda?
I also noticed that the person that was sending changed his face smiling.
Yes.
Their eyes were up. And when they started sending angry, suddenly their face got
Yeah. Yeah.
Their mouth was lower. They were scrunching
Yeah.
as they were doing. So you can watch both sides.
Unless you're a poker face person.
Yeah.
You practice.
It's interesting too, sorry,
No, that's fine.
that you feel other people's energy. So it's not even that someone has to even say anything, but like
Yeah.
even as we come together as a group,
Yeah.
we collectively feel each other's energy.
Yes.
You know, so sometimes I'm sure we've all done this, you come to church and the energy feels really low.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
maybe there's a lot of heavy-hearted people or maybe
Yeah.
who knows, but like that we, you know, at first I thought it was strange that we weren't communicating through talking, but it did bring up that point.
Yeah. And talking helps it too. Yeah, definitely. I've just shown you the facial expressions and just even our thoughts and how they affect our face and how we receive those. So.
It's super helpful to be aware that, you know, both sides. It's like that even if we're not saying much, our energy does affect and can bring down a whole room. Like that's really sobering to realize that we kind of have, not to be fake, I don't mean to be fake at all, but just to be aware that what we do affects everybody around us.
Right. Exactly.
And probably better just to be honest about it. If they can tell anyway and they're thinking, what is going on?
Yeah.
They might say, it's not you, but I'm having a really bad day. Or whatever, you know.
That's why we started out with feelings. Do you know what you're feeling? Are you aware of them?
Too, you know?
So that you can people can help you with them and you can help them or yourself with it. So, hey, we're gonna make it on time, I think here. Hey, let's go. I got a few more things here. Thank you so much. You've been such a great audience and great participants and appreciate that. If you look on page 3, you've got under C, you have so backing up a little bit, we talked about joy, how Jesus gives us joy and how we need to receive that joy from him and to give him joy, and how we joyfy other people. We give joy to other people by helping them feel that I'm glad to be with you, whatever that may mean, and greeting one another, and greeting not just our own group, but everybody that we can, more than one person, and having eye-to-eye contact, it'll vary with different people. Then working on having our RCs on. And then we talked about, actually I changed number 5. Instead of just avoid overwhelm, I said respect capacity and avoid overwhelm. So it's good to be aware of those things, both in ourselves and others. So the last one is joy to you. How do you cultivate your own joy? It's not selfish, it's actually Jesus' joy. If you see the joy ring here on that page, you got that little yellow chart. It says joy ring. In the middle is the big heart joy. Well, this is Jesus' island, okay? These are islands. Jesus isn't on this island. He's where all the joy is, okay? But things happen to us. We get on these other outside islands, like mad at the top, sad, bad, you feel guilty or whatever, fear, disgust, hopeless despair. So we all get on different islands at times. And that's not necessarily sinful. That's part of human nature, I think. Even Jesus, I think, was sad when he's overwhelmed at the point of death. So it's not bad to be on those islands. You need to be able to get off of those islands. Otherwise, you won't have joy. And so if you see the little arrows there to the joy, you get off those islands partly by turning your RCs on, trying to work on that, but with people's help. So go to the next page. How do you bring joy to yourself and to one another? How do you turn your RCs on? How do you turn your RCs on so that you can bring joy to other people? One of the things I want to share with you, this may seem a little weird, but is an exercise that can help you if you're in a fight or flight syndrome, or if you're in a situation, or you're in a stressful situation. It depends. It doesn't always work for everybody. But it has to do with, you've got vagus nerves down here, and you've got some center points right here that if you tap them about the speed of your heart, and well, first of all, take a deep breath. You can do it by having 3 deep breaths. Slow relief. So do it with me. Do you feel more relaxed? Yeah, that's one thing to do. Another thing we do, we helped the lady with, and we were taught this, was that you've got this vagus nerve, and if you tap it about and do this exercise, you take a deep breath, start taking a breath, and tap it about like that, and then let your air out and you go, what is it, Linda? When I'm afraid, I will trust in you, O Lord.
When I am afraid, I will trust in you, Lord.
That's just, you could say something else, but it's mainly the tapping the vagus nerves that helps to calm down this flight or fright syndrome. So you, but when you go, when I'm afraid, I will trust in you, O Lord. You can do either counterclockwise or clockwise. When I'm afraid, I will trust in you, O Lord. And do it with me. Yeah. When I'm afraid, I will trust in you, O Lord. When I'm afraid, I will trust in you, O Lord. When I'm afraid, I will trust in you, O Lord. That comes out of Psalms 56:3. This can really work for a lot of people. We had a lady that was in a Bible talk that we went to visit, and she was just almost hysterical. Something was going on. It was just, I don't remember what it was, but she couldn't. So we had her do this. She calmed down right away. So it's really, wow, I didn't know it would work like that. But anyway, so that's something you can do if you're feeling stressed or you just see if it works. It may not work for you, it may work. But try to practice what's called practice shalom for your body. Take a deep breath, 2 or 3. There's different ways to do it. Rich was sharing me the other day a different way he does it. There's different ways. Or listen to calming music, different things. But the vagus nerve is supposed to help when you tap it. A second thing you could do is to making relationships more important than the problems. In other words, that's a sort of a decision that you have to. Okay, I love this person. I want to love this person in spite of what they're doing, what they've done, or what I feel. So you just have to pray about that and try to work on that. Another thing you can do is practice gratitude. Like in Philippians 4, 8, and 9, it talks about think on these things, whatever is good, perfect, all these things. Think about those things. Write those things down. Have that be part of your life. Thanksgiving is a big way to turn on your relational circuits when they're off. A last one that I have there, and I got 2 B's here. It should be A, B, C, D. Get with someone who can listen and attune with you. We've already talked about this. This will help you to work through what you're feeling and to work through any type of stress you're under. Just a good way to do that. Excuse me. And secondly, not only do you bring joy to yourself, but you can bring joy to others. When their RCs are off, when they're, you can see they're stressed or overwhelmed or whatever, watch for those who are off Jesus' joy island. Are they in their joy islands? Are usually in the joy island, but they don't seem to be in the joy island today. Well, make loving eye contact with them. Greet them, letting them know you're glad to be with them. Actively listen if they're wanting to talk. And relay empathy to them. Ask some gentle, curious questions. Attune with them emotionally. Ask what they need. But don't give advice without permission. Okay, because that may not be what they need at the time. And just be with them. Lots of times if people are going through grief, that's all they need. Just someone there, sitting with them. Don't say anything. You're just there. They just need someone there. And so this will help get yourself and others back to the joy island with Jesus. And so, any questions so far? I just want to, we've gone through a lot of stuff here. but I hope they're things that help you work on emotional intelligence, basically. Work on where you're at and where other people are at in order to minister to them as your brother and sister. And it also, I think someone said that it's going to help us as a church to be closer together, to help each other, to become more like Christ. So, what do we do now? Until workshop 3, which will probably be in September. Practice. I want you to practice in following. Continue to check in if you can in your groups at least once a month, I would hope, a formal one. But otherwise, if you can't, I don't know if all of you have prayer partners, or if you want to call them discipleship partner, whatever. But try to use what we've done today. Talk about these things that we talked about today. Review these, and use Flan to talk about how do you feel about this. What's going on? I mean, you don't have to do exactly what we said here. I'm just giving you some things that will hopefully help out. And then practice receiving Jesus' joy and giving joy to Jesus in your quiet times. Okay, do I receive Jesus' joy? He came and he did this for me. He tells me he loves me. Do I receive that? Or is that still out there a long distance? I can't really experience that in my heart. Pray about that. Work on that. Do I give joy to Jesus? Am I turning to him? Do I love him? It's got to be what's in your heart, not the actions. Is my heart such that he knows I love him? Practice having a heart-to-heart communication with others, that I'm glad to be with you. Try to practice that. Whenever you're with someone, tell them, I'm glad to be with you. This is great. Good to see you. Things like that. Practice greeting those you don't normally greet. Okay. Because you're going to bring joy to more of the body and even outside. Practice eye-to-eye contact. It'll vary, but make sure you look at somebody in the eye, make eye contact. Practice helping each other become aware of your RCs and how to turn them on and off. Actually, not off. Turn them on. Your small groups and daily life. We're trying to learn how to walk like Jesus. And this isn't going to happen overnight. It's a process. It's a growth. It's not going to come without some pain, probably. How do I do it? This is hard. It's not about perfection. It's about the heart that want to do that. About the heart that I love Jesus. I want to try to be like him. So share your victories with each other in the small groups and your feelings about this. And use Flan. Use the Flan idea. You don't have to have a legalistic Flan. Okay, we're going to feel it. But as part of your life, practice being aware of overwhelm and being overwhelmed, and how you respond to that with the other person. It'll bring joy to them if am I overwhelming you? Yeah, I feel it. It's going to bring some joy because you understand, and you're aware of them, and you're sensitive to where they're at. It's not just about you talking or you doing things. You're sensitive to where they're at. It's going to speak to their heart. So, I want us to close with a prayer here pretty quick, but I want us to sing that song again. If Rich can come up and sing. And I want you to think about the song as part of what we've talked about. And if we're willing to do the second part, yes, I'm poured out like wine. But let's do a whole song.
Would you be poured out like wine upon the altar for me? Would you be broken like bread to feed the hungry? Would you be so one with me that I may do just as I will? Would you be light and life and love my word fulfill? Yes, I'll be poured out like wine upon the altar for you. Yes, I'll be broken like bread to feed the hungry. Yes, I'll be so one with you that you may do just as you will. Yes, I'll be light and life and love your word fulfill.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you, everyone. Max is going to come up and have a response and then have a part.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Glenn. Can we give Glenn a round of applause? Thank you. Really appreciate it. I know this is so close to your heart, Glenn, and just your desire to see God's people be this like Hesed community, as you've talked about, and just, yeah, I think that's what I want. I want us to be a church where we really can share our hearts with each other, where we really can help one another to process things, or, you know, we're a safe place for each other. I think there's a piece of me that, if I'm totally honest, like, I just was not raised in a touchy-feely world, so I still feel this grating in some ways against my flesh, this piece of me that wants, like, I kind of feel like I need to go out and, like, I don't know, like shoot an animal with a bow or something. I just feel like there's like this part of me that's just like, this is effeminate, and this is like, you know, but then I realized, you know what, no, this is who Jesus was, and he really had this incredible, I think, emotional intelligence that enabled him to connect with people, to help people. We see even just his own awareness, you know, in the garden, like you had mentioned, of I'm overwhelmed with sorrow, him being able to communicate where he was at. And there's been times Alyssa's asked me, she's like, how you feeling? I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel anything. She's like, I don't think that's true. I think you probably feel stuff. You just don't know what it is. And I think over the years of following Jesus, becoming more and more in touch with that, it's only been a blessing to me to become more aware of what I'm feeling, be able to aware of others. I think, Glenn, you put words to some things that I've experienced. Like, I think I've certainly felt, even as an introvert, overwhelmed at different points and not realizing it. And I just hit this wall and I'm just kind of like shut down in a conversation. And like, it helps me to see, okay, that's what's going on there. Like, and having the maturity to say, hey, you know, I just need some space for a minute, you know? I just think these are relational skills that ultimately are going to really help us to become a group that, man, we just love being with each other. We look to each other when we're, you know, for help. We can share joy. We can share trial. And I think ultimately, I think we're going to get into this in the next workshop, but I think this makes us really a light to a world that does not know how to process, how to share, how to be safe. That is more and more polarized every year, you know. So I do think this is so good. So thank you again. Thank you for your heart, Glenn, in the time you've put into all this stuff. Let's practice these things. Amen? I'll go ahead and just say a prayer, and I think we'll be done. Okay? Let's pray.